Welcome everyone to the lesson 10. In this lecture we are going to discuss about the last Government of India Act, which was Government of India Act of 1935. Okay, Government of India Act of so this was like the Simon Commission happened before that. So the commission headed by Sir John Simon constituted in 1927 to inquire into the working of the Act of 1919, placed to report into 1930, and the report was examined by the British Parliament and Government of India, which was drafted accordingly. That's what considered under the Simon Commission. Okay, that was just to inquire what is the working act is done under 1919, and they will prepare a report on it in 1930, that whether it was working fine or not. On that basis, this on that basis the government will be run, and the policy will be drafted. Okay, and that will be examined by the British Parliament. That happened under the Simon Commission. So if you have watched my previous lecture, then you will be able to relate this information. Now, the Government of India Act of 1935. It was a lengthy and detailed document having 321 sections and 10 schedules. In this Government of India Act, it was very lengthy, which had 321 sections and 102 schedules were introduced under it. Okay, this act of 1935 prescribed a federation taking the provinces and Indian states, native states as unit. Like, this act gave the provisions, like if there is a province and there is a small state of the British, so they provided the provisions to combine those things as a as a as a unit, as a one unit. Okay, but it was optional for the Indian state to join the federation. It was optional to them, it was not mandatory to join as a unit, and thus it was optional for the Indian state to join the federation. And since they never joined this federation, this unification never came into existence. This federation never came into being. This never worked, this never happened. This act separated Burma from India. Through this act only, we are Myanmar and all, we see a separate thing. So through this act only, Burma was separated from India. Okay, and two new provinces of Odisha and Sindh were created. This act divided legislative power between the center and the provinces. Okay, that was also happened in before acts, previous acts. The executive authority of provinces was also exercised by the governor on behalf of the crown and not as a subordinate of the governor general. Yes, the new thing that was added into this thing, that now provinces can directly exercise some of the authorities by considering the power of the crown. Now they don't have to connect with the governor general. Okay, so the executive authority of a province was also exercised by a governor on behalf of the crown. Okay, and not as a subordinate of a governor general, and not as a subordinate of governor general. Okay, Yeah, so the governor was required to act the advice of minister responsible to the legislature, we know, and in certain matters the governor was required to act in the discretion without ministerial advice and under the control and direction of the governor general through him or secretary of state. So there were like more power was given to the governor of the provinces through this act. The executive authority of the center was vested in the governor general on behalf of the crown, like whether that things to be executed or not, how it things to be executed, that vests with the power with the governor general. Councillor or council of ministers responsible for the legislature was not appointed through such provisions existed under 1935, like that voting majority and all were not being followed, uh, stopped being followed through this act. Like through this act, like there were majority, we know there were majority was majority of getting elected for the Indians was given through in the 19 in the previous provisions, but now there were removed. Okay, and the central legislature was bicameral consisting of federal assembly and council of state, and in 6 provinces the legislature was bicameral comprising legislative assembly and legislative council. In other provinces legislature was unicameral. So within the provinces also, in some of the states, in today also, today's scenario also, there can be a bicameral within the state, there can be a bicameral within the state also, and it was not mandatory. Some states are unicameral and some states could be a bicameral as per their requirement. Okay, so apart from the governor general's power of veto, a bill was passed by the central legislature was also subject to the veto by the crown. So there will be a veto power to the crown as well. Okay, and the governor general could prevent the discussions in the legislature and suspend the proceeding on any bill if he was satisfied that it would affect the discharge of his special responsibilities. And the governor general had independent powers of the legislation concurrently with those of the legislature, and on some bills there will be a no amendment could be introduced in the legislature without the governor general previous sanction. So it was like more power were given to the central government through this act. And a threefold division of the act of 1935 was that there was a federal list over which the federal legislature had exclusive power on the legislation. There will be a provincial list where will the provincial legislature had exclusive jurisdiction, and there will be a concurrent list of which both the federal and provincial government will have a power on it. So that we have seen subject matter, that there will be a provincial subject matter, there will be a central subject matter. It is talking about this thing only, transferred result. So there will be a like a threefold division. There will be a provincial list of matter, there will be a central list of matter where on certain things reserved will, some certain list will be reserved, and there will be a concurrent list. Concurrent list was transferred list, where central government can also be can also interfere. The governor general was empowered to authorize either the federal or the provincial legislature to enact a law with respect to any matter which was not enumerated in the legislative list, in those legislative lists whatever we have discussed. Dominion status, one important thing, dominion status was promised by the Simon Commission in 1929, was not conferred by the Government of India Act. Okay, there were requested for the dominion status, which was promised by the Simon Commission, was not conferred under this Act of 1935. Okay, so this was all about for all the acts. We have discussed all the reforms, all the act in detail. Okay, so these were the reforms that we have discussed. Government of India Act of 1858, 1861, Indian Council Act of 1861, Indian Council Act of 1892, then Model Military Reform of Indian Council Act of 1909, Government of India Act 1915, 1919 and 1935. Okay, thank you.